Hello, 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 and welcome to the Blue Oval Podcast. I am Ben Weissel, and joining me, as always, Garrett Satlin. How's it going, man?
Ben, before we got on the pod, you were like, Garrett, how's it feel, man? The indoor track season's done. And I think I said, you know what, it's just nice to have a sigh of relief for a change. And you caught the for a change at the tail. You go, for a change? That's pretty sad. I'm like, yeah, oh well. But this is the season's done. I get to just chat with you for the next couple weeks here in a little bit more of a relaxed manner. And great season overall. So it was fun.
It's always the way these seasons go, but especially for the indoor season, it's like, all right, there's just a high level of excitement that they're here, they're happening, and then you kind of go through a little bit of a lull, and then it's just an absolute like sprint the last like couple of weeks with
Yep.
conference championships, like regionals for outdoor and cross country, and then national championship, and you just are like exhausted. I feel like after each of those national championships, and then we work our way back up to excitement a little while later.
Well, the challenge with indoors is that indoors is easily the hardest like time season to cover. Everyone's chasing time, so it's not just get your regional qualifier and be done for
Right.
the season until the postseason. It's constant like amazing performances. And then not only that, but the D1, D2, and D3 national meets all fall
Yep.
on the same weekend. Whereas on the outdoor season, it's just D2, D3 the same weekend, followed by D1. So I will say this was probably the most manageable indoor track season we've ever had, at least on my end. Great staff, great support, a lot of great freelancers joined us. So very happy about that. Not happy about the lack of ratings and reviews we got. We're trying. We're trying. Yeah, I don't know what more we got to do here. So help us out. Thank you. Ratings and reviews, Apple Podcast, Spotify. Leave us a subscription on YouTube. A lot of great interviews from the National Meet
hmm
on YouTube. But Ben, we got stuff to talk about, man. We got to get into it.
Let's get into it, and we're gonna go in the order of the finals that occurred. So we're gonna start with the women's 5K, and this was Doris Lemngole taking home the championship in a thrilling battle
Mhm.
against Lexy Halladay-Lowry. I think this is when you think about Lemon Goal, since she's come into the NCAA, and any race that hasn't included like Parker Volby or Caitlin Dewey or any of the all time greats, and in her one of her best events, so whether that's the 5K, the 10K, the 3K steeple, this is I think is the one race where someone's pushed her the hardest, and I think that says a lot about how well Lexy Halladay-Lowry has been running this year. It's almost a shame that we didn't see her take home any like gold medals this weekend, but she was one of the best runners I think the entire year, and we saw that I think reflected in her second place finish. But I mean, Lemengole again is the story. Great performance, great kick at the end. Just looks so smooth tactically the entire race, and takes home the win at 15:05.
And this is why I'm a massive fan of Coach Nick Steniff at Alabama. It's one thing to just be like, hey, listen, like she's just really fit. Like she's going to go win a couple more national titles just on the merit of her own fitness. But what you saw this season, and specific towards the tail end, and more specifically at the national meet, was the turnover, was the
Mm-hmm.
speed, was the kick. There was a tactical understanding. There was a refinement. She actually looks like she's know what she's doing now,
Yep.
and it showed in her moves. Her turnover, her kicking was so much better. It's the best it's ever looked. And I would argue from a complete all around racing standpoint, this was the best that Doris Lemengole has ever looked. Yeah, I mean, we've already known how great her fitness is, but I struggled. I don't think it's possible for anyone to beat her in the steeplechase, and that's even with Lexy Halladay-Lowry being on complete fire and likely having a level up of her own still to have. But if Lemengole is going to keep running like that in the spring, no one's going to touch her.
Yeah, she just looked in control. I think that was the word that I kept coming back to is everything looked very calculated. It didn't look like she was having to strain all that hard at any point until the last lap, really. And I think that was a reflection of just how fit she is, but also, like you said, her tactical acumen was especially strong. It felt like in these championships. you look down the rest of these results. I mean, obviously, Amy Bunnage was taking things out and made this pace very honest. Had to step off the track. I think it was reported by ESPN that there was some cramps involved there. The way that she was walking off, though, was very
I'm
like, it
so
had
glad
me
you said that.
very concerned, and so I was very glad to see her run the next day because it almost looked like there was a bone issue, the way that she was so gingerly walking around. So glad to hear that it was just a cramp. But I mean, she really made this race in a lot of ways. She pushed it hard. It's a shame that she wasn't able to finish. I think someone like Pamela Kosgei really took full advantage of the way that this was run. Same with Elise Stearns. I think they were some large beneficiaries of just, hey, they were super fit. They can run this sub 15:10 pace and compete at the highest level. But we got to mention, you predicted these results almost down to a T.
It was pretty great, huh? So for those wondering, the winner was Doris Lemngole. I had Doris Lemngole in first. I got Lexy Halladay-Lowry correct in second. I got Pamela Kosgei correct in third. I got Elise Stearns correct in fourth. I had Grace Hartman in fifth. Instead, that was I'm sorry. I had Grace Hartman in fifth instead of Sophia Kennedy. Grace Hartman instead got sixth. I had Bunnage in sixth. She was a DNF, and then I had Hilda Olamonwe in seventh. That was correct, and I had Peyton Noe in eighth. Probably the best. I don't think there's no chance I've ever had predictions better than that.
No, I think none of us have ever had. I think in the history of the Stride Report, I don't think we've ever seen. We've seen like 1, 2, 3, 4. I think before,
Yeah,
but I don't think we've seen like 6 out of the top 8
7
exactly
for 8 exactly.
correctly.
Yeah. That's
almost impossible to do.
Who are these top 8 All-Americans did you feel like you learned the most about, or you got the biggest takeaway from?
Oh man,
because
really anybody.
I was going to say. So what I'm trying to ultimately get at here is, did we learn anything about this 5K field?
Not really.
Amy Bunnage is struggling to stay healthy.
Yeah, I think Kennedy may be like a little ahead of schedule, but she'd already been running super well. It's not as it wasn't crazy to say that she was going to be an All-American. And then Hartman's been awesome this year. I mean, we've obviously seen what Olamonwe can do. Noe's been awesome. I don't think we really learned a whole lot from any of these women.
I would like to say something further. I don't
have
a
whole lot else to say.
Yeah. It was, and that's the worst part about being as good at my job as I am, is that it's just it's just predictable. This is, if you listen to the pre-meet episode, this is basically what we said.
Right.
I mean, it's really spot on, which I think is great because it means that the best women ran the best.
Yes.
You and I was listening back, and you even asked, you're like, is Chloe Scrimger even going to be an All-American?
Yeah.
And you and I were like, she could, but I don't know if she will. And naturally, she was 9th, which is the first spot out. So, yeah.
I mean, obviously, this was not, we did this in order of events, but this is a great start to the episode because it was exactly what we kind of have been, like you said, been talking about. I think we had the best feel for this event. Now, there's other ones we'll talk more about where we're both looking at each other being like, I don't know how this is going to end up.
Yeah, it's true.
And it ended up in some unpredictable ways. But let's move on to the men's 5K. And this was something that was a little unpredictable. I think we did look at a lot of the names that we were looking at that would contend. I think we're certainly up there. But I don't think anybody was picking Brian Musau to take home the title in 13:11, edging out Habtom Samuel. And Rocky Hansen finishing a surprise third as well. But I mean, we say that we weren't predicting Musau to win. You look at his overall resume over the last year, it's conceivable that this isn't like him coming out of nowhere, right? He's beaten, I think, Samuel in the 5K, I think last outdoor season. He's been great in cross country. This isn't some plucky underdog coming out of nowhere and winning this race. And his post race interview was interesting because he was almost building it up as oh yeah, I just didn't think I had any shot against these guys. I was like, What do you mean? You're one of the best runners in the country. Like, of course you had a shot. And for him to ultimately take home the win, his kick again. Samuel, I think, had a strong kick, but that was always going to be the thing that you weren't quite sure if someone had a really strong kick and was right there with them, you didn't have 100% confidence in him. That said, I mean, he's still, I think, what did he split? 26 in that last 200.
Yeah,
I mean,
something
he
crazy.
still had a fantastic kick. Musau just ran 25.8 to close a 5K in 13:11, which is nuts. But yeah, I think we saw a lot of the things play out the way that we thought they could. The only, I think, big surprises were Liam Murphy and Yassine Abdallah. Both, I mean, Abdallah was fading very early, and Murphy just hit a wall, it seemed like, a couple K in as well. Outside of that, I mean, I think we both mentioned Hansen as a potential guy that could finish higher, and I mentioned Klinger as someone that
Yes,
I
you
was
did.
pretty high on. He
Yes, you
ended
did.
up finishing fourth. So again, some interesting and surprising results, but a lot of these things you could have seen coming in a way.
Yeah, now I want to make sure we don't play too much revisionist history with Musau in the
Yes,
sense of
yes,
like,
that's fair.
especially me, and you were higher in your defense, you were higher on Musau than I was. I figured, okay, eventually he's going to win a national title, probably
Right,
multiple at some
of
point. I
course.
didn't think that was going to be the season. I didn't think he had looked quite as strong or quite as convincing this season. Now, granted, he had certainly, you know, been better in recent weeks. But if you told me, hey, he's going to split 25 seconds on the final lap to take down Habtom
Yeah,
Samuel in a 13:11 5K championship race, I'd be like, probably not. But I do think it goes to show, like, hey, when he is from a skill set standpoint, from a fitness standpoint, from a how he executes standpoint, one of the most complete athletes in this field. And it goes to show, like, being well rounded, being complete, being able to kick, being able to be aggressive, being able to have the experience. And for whatever reason, Brian Musau is Habtom Samuel's kryptonite.
yeah.
Habtom Samuel cannot beat this guy, at least on the track. And it's probably very frustrating. Like, even when Habtom Samuel was clearly the better cross country runner in the fall, Musau still beat him at the Cowboy Jamboree earlier that season, right? But you look at the Brian Clay 5K last year, Musau barely got him. You look at the indoor national meet from last year, Musau got him. You look at the outdoor national meet, Musau got him. Now you look at this. I don't know what it is about Brian Musau, but he's probably public enemy number one for Habtom Samuel.
Yeah. I mean, not to say again, I everything I'm saying about Masao, you look back at his last like 12 months and you could see, hey, this is possible. But you look back at the last couple months and it didn't really seem possible. He was not even in our top like 3 or 4 names that we were talking about in our preview pod, which is why this was a surprise because we just didn't think he had his best stuff. And again, I'll reference the post race interview. It didn't seem like he thought he had his best stuff going into this race. And so that's why he was not part of that group that we thought really had a realistic chance of winning. But yeah, I mean, to your point, it's we kind of, I think we talked about it last week, where it's like that kind of almost that Goldilocks of like just fast enough, just strong enough, like
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
not being skewed one way or another too far, and he fits that to a T.
I like that analogy, the Goldilocks analogy. That's a good one. I like that. Yassine Abdallah, 15th. He had a brutal weekend.
Yeah,
Go check out the interview that we had that Donnie did. Shout out Donnie for grabbing that. Did you see this interview? I don't know if it was
no,
had a
I didn't. I missed that one.
yeah. It was. I mean, it's. I mean, he's just distraught, and you feel awful, but you also love the humility because
Yeah,
it's. I don't think it's any secret that Abdallah is a very big character. He is very big into like his YouTube page and trying to self promote, which in the sport we kind of need more of, right?
is awesome. Yeah,
It's great, but I would have been really upset if he was just like, you get him next time. I would have been mad. I've been like, no. Instead, he was like, I wanted him to show some humility, and I don't ever want someone to be like upset or like in distress or anything along those lines. I don't want that for anyone. But I thought it was just a really nice moment of like how much he cares, how much it really weighed on him, and in a really frustrating way was a little poetic. And so I thought it was a really great interview, and I appreciate him giving that transparency to us.
yeah, and not having seen it myself, but we want our athletes to show they care, right? And that's whether it's at the collegiate level, it's at the professional level. That's how we connect with them as fans
Yeah.
is be able to say, hey, like this means something to me watching it. It should mean a lot more to you,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
so for whenever athletes show that, even and it is and even in the most constructive way, I think that connects them further to fans, and as a sport that we're trying to grow, you certainly want to see that. Marco Langone, or Langan, very solid performance. Put himself out there. I thought it was awesome to see him go for it. I thought that was really cool, and he obviously ended up fading a little bit, but I thought a very solid performance from him. Ishmael Kipkuri, I think very interesting name to keep an eye
Interesting.
on,
Yep.
because he broke out, ran some fast times, ends up finishing what, eighth or seventh in this 5K. Once he learns how to run these races, he's going to be dynamite. Like, I mean, he's you could see it. He didn't either trust himself fully or know exactly what to do. Samuel was trying to get him to share some of the pacing burden, and it just it didn't seem like he was really quite ready.
They didn't
And
seem to be on the same page.
no, exactly. And so, like, and again, I don't know if it was a communication thing, if it was a confidence thing, whatever it was. I think once things start to click for him, in terms of like how to race these national championships, he's going to be exceptionally dangerous.
I agree. The most underrated distance athlete in the NCAA right now, by the way, is Dennis Kipnigatich of Oklahoma
Yes.
State, and am not going to argue with you on that because my mind is made up. So, all right, let's skip over to the DMR, women's DMR, I believe. Yeah, women's
Yes.
DMR. BYU.
They do it again.
They do it again. Riley Chamberlain splits 425 on the anchor leg to not just catch Solana Yildiz of Oregon on the anchor leg, but then surpass her and defeat her. It was BYU with the best anchor in the field,
Yep.
in Riley Chamberlain, and maybe the most talented, but also they had a very limited lineup by comparison, whereas Oregon had a pretty mostly stacked lineup,
Yep.
except they were just doubling back Wilma, Nielsen, and Shalana Yildiz. I have to be honest, I saw Jenna Hutchins on the start line for the 1,200 meters, and I'm like, well, they're not going to win. And yet she was maybe the most important
Yeah.
runner on this relay. She got them into third and got them within striking distance. It was huge.
Yeah, heroic performance for her just to keep them in it, right?
Yeah.
They were a couple seconds back of Providence and Oregon, but that's all they needed to be. Like, and I don't know about you, but I had no doubt in my mind when it was like Chamberlain and it was that close to Yildiz. Like, I was like, I just think she's going to beat her. Like,
Okay, so here, question. When they exchange the baton and Oregon's and Yildiz gets out in front, at that point, when you saw the difference between Chamberlain getting the baton and Yildiz getting the baton, did you think that BYU was going to win that race or could win that race?
I thought they could win it. I mean, it was a big gap, right? It was a 4-second gap. Once that gap was narrowed to like 20 meters, I was like, yeah, this is like,
I didn't
it's
feel that way.
hard. It's hard for me to see any other result. And this I'll talk about this in the mile more, but I just had not probably the least amount of faith in a favorite in their event than I insight Shalana Yildiz. Like, I just did not think that, and she ran well in both like the DMR and they weren't bad performances. I just, the way she runs, I don't think that it's super conducive to winning titles or winning a DMR like this. Chamberlain, I think, is just one of the best anchors of all time. Like, I mean, and so it's not really a knock on Yildiz. She still hung tough with her and still finished second. I just think Chamberlain is that good, and it's kind of surprising to me that she hasn't won any individual titles. I almost wonder if it's, especially on the indoor side, and this theory is going to hopefully be proven correct when we come to outdoor. Like, she's just a taller runner, and taller runners, it's harder to
Mm-hmm.
make moves in a crowded indoor track. DMR is perfect for her because it's not very crowded. There's usually, especially when you come to anchor leg, there's just a couple other athletes, and I think it's so much more conducive for her to be able to release her legs and just go. And I think we're gonna see some. I'm predicting a national championship from her this outdoor season because I think she's just at that level, and running.
So it
So
would have to be in the 15 then.
yes, yeah.
I don't dislike that. I don't dislike that at all. I think it's great. Is this the most impressive DMR national title win, knowing who Diljeet Taylor had to replace in recent memory? On the women's side, because I think in men, at least among recent memory, I could think of the Texas DMR team winning that a few years ago. Really, that was pretty wild. On the women's side, I'm this team had a 10K runner and Jenna Hutchins dropped down to the 12. They had a true freshman in Tessa Buswell who got gapped further when she got the baton. And then Riley Chamberlain had to split 4:25, all while not jeopardizing Carmen Alder's mile chances, Lexy Halladay-Lowry's 5K, 3K chances, Megan Hunter's 800-meter chances, even though she didn't make the finals. Carly Hansen didn't even run.
Yeah.
What an all-time lineup call from Taylor.
Yeah, it worked out exactly as she could have, as well as she could have hoped for, I'm sure. The only other one that comes to mind is the Stanford win from a couple of years ago in a slightly different way. It wasn't as if it was like, hey, you're making these tough decisions of you're running Rasheen Willis and Juliet Whitaker, but just for them to double back and to win that, I think no one really had them on our radar, especially they were true freshmen that year.
Yeah, they were.
To be able to do
Tanaka
that.
had not yet come out as big as she was.
Right. And she was really the key in that relay. That's the only one that comes to mind. But yeah, this was one. And we talked about this when we were previewing it, being like, I don't know who's going to win this because it's just you're either doubling back or your relay isn't really that good. And we ended up calling out a lot of the right names. I had said Oregon was the favorite. I think Providence ended up finishing third. They ran well. That was to be expected. And then LSU with Rangel Beatrice and Makayla Rose throwing down an awesome leg ended up finishing fourth. And I said I would be stunned if Utah did not finish in the top 5, and they did finish in.
Where are these results? I just lost all my results. That's devastating news. Okay. No, yeah. Okay, not as good as I thought I was going to be. I thought I had done pretty well in these predictions, and I did at the top, not so much at the bottom. But the point being, I hated this race, by the way, just in general.
It was a crapshoot.
It just didn't feel good about any of the names, any of the athletes. Just was not my favorite race. Not to say that it was a poor race, but
it was just hard to predict. I mean, there's when you don't know who's going to run, it makes it a little bit more difficult to figure out who's going to win. But let's move on to the men's DMR, and this one we did know who the top dogs were going to be and who was going to be running in those lineups, and ultimately it was Gary Martin's Virginia who took home the title in 9:15, beating Ethan Strand's North Carolina. Gary Martin splitting 3:48 and just putting a devastating kick together at the end of this race. There's a lot of times when I think the commentators do a great job and probably are given too much criticism.
Agreed.
Because it's hard. It's a hard job to do. But I will say, when they're talking about the race early on, you gotta know, all right, the best legs are Gary Martin and Ethan Strand. Don't worry too much about these other teams, even if Virginia is a little further back, a couple legs into it. I was losing. But that's kind of a side point. But it was so interesting to see Ethan Strand go early in this race, and I think that's ultimately. Do you think that was kind of what cost him, or do you think Gary Martin was going to win this race kind of no matter what?
It probably cost him. The challenge though is then it's okay, well then who's chasing the leaders? Who's going to go get them? Yeah. So it's not like Oregon or Texas A&M or BYU like ran slow. They ran
No.
9:17, 9:17, and 9:18. So like someone had to go chase them, right? Like someone had to go get them. Um, it was. I don't know how else to say this. I just someone had to go do it. I think
Yeah.
Strand took a calculated risk. He was kind of in a disadvantageous position, regardless, with Martin having to stalk him or getting the chance to stalk him.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. Like I think I just kind of shrugged my shoulders and I was like, this is kind of a coin flip. As long as those guys were within reasonable striking distance of the leaders, it was choose your fighter, flip a coin. It was either going to be Virginia, North Carolina. In this case, it was Virginia, and Martin was just flat out had the better position, was more advantageous, better tactically, better kick. I mean, he was just better. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think Oregon set this up as well as they could have.
that it
I
could, yeah.
think they ran a really strong race. You look at their first three legs of Paul Free, Omer, and Harding. They set up Cook in a great position, and I think, I mean, in almost any other year, Oregon wins this race.
Oh
Like
yeah,
it took two 348 milers to be able to take down this Oregon team. They ran a fantastic relay. And I will say the same thing about Texas A&M. They put together a really,
they
really
were
good
great.
performance. Cooper Cothra's 351. I mean, that
Yeah,
was an amazing. But it was Sam Whitmarsh's 145 that really put them solidly in that race. They ran. I thought they were one team. I think we called out last week about being like, hey, they're going to be all fresh. They've run a fast DMR, but this was even better than I thought we could imagine. And I think you can say the same thing about BYU, putting together a lineup of, like, besides Lucas Bonds, guys that most people on this podcast probably have not heard a lot about, and coming out with a 918 fifth place performance and beating Oklahoma State. I think Oklahoma State was the one that is the most surprising result out of all of this, coming all the way back in sixth.
what do you mean by surprising? In the sense that like you thought they could have placed higher, or
Yes. Yeah. I thought they were behind Virginia and North Carolina. I had them kind of slotted third or fourth. And for them to I get just not run as fast. I mean, I think I'm surprised that they didn't break 920.
I was frustrated by a lot of teams in this field, the
Yep.
back end teams. Virginia Tech, like what was Virginia Tech doing? Put Nick Plant on the opener. Like Nick Plant's awesome, but guess what? He split 353, which was still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like that really just puts him in the middle of the field. Maybe a little bit above that. They don't have George Cootie on there, right? I look at Wake Forest. I was told that JoJo Jordan would be leading off. Nope, it was Luke T-Wald, and there's just substitutions and like things here that I look at from like across a handful of lineups, and I'm just like, well, what? Well, this just didn't make sense. The lineup orders, who ran what. There's just certain things there. I'm just like, if even if the lineup orders did turn out well, then there was just a leg or two where things did not go in their favor. So yeah, I was a little frustrated because like I'm looking at this and I'm just like, well, how does BYU, a team that had really not been running that well,
Yeah.
well, Lucas Bonds especially, them coming out and to get fifth place was pretty impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not as down on the Virginia Tech, if depending on like if they were going to be running George Cootie or not. Like,
Well, it's just that Christian Jackson splits 145 in the race of his life, and they get
yeah.
seventh. If you had told me Christian Jackson before the meet would split 145, I'd be like, top 4, All-American, top half lock, no problem. And then they're seventh, which is frustrating.
Yeah, the 400 leg kind of hurt them there. Honestly.
Yeah, and it's not just Virginia Tech. It's a handful of these other, like Princeton. What I get that Harrison Witt, wanted to go all in for the mile or whatnot. Have him double back. You're an All-American. He still makes the finals.
The Wake Forest one was the most questionable one for me for not having T-Walt on the anchor. I thought that was.
I think that's correct. I also agree. I would think, okay, it's like, okay, you want to put JoJo Jordan in there, fine. But when he's not in there, I agree with you. Put Speck. Speck was already a great 12 leg, right? And T-Walt's better in the mile. So
that one didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
They certainly could have been All-American, I think, if they swapped that around.
Yeah. So is what it is. Oh well. I mean, hey, listen. Like I'm a guy behind a mic. Like I'm not a coach. Like these coaches.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we're dealing with an information deficit. We don't see all the things that coaches see. We don't see the training. We don't know all the things that they do and what certain athletes feel comfortable with, whatever. But based off of the information we have, there was some questionable choices in these DMR selections.
Yeah,
But
not just by one team, by multiple. So,
absolutely.
all right, we're moving off of that. Where are we going next here? Where do you want to go?
Women's mile, and
Yes.
it was Wilma Nielsen's day, running 4:32 to finish as the champion. Great prediction there. I think the most surprising result was the second place finisher, Mina Scatchard, finishing from Princeton, finishing right behind Nielsen, really giving her quite the challenge. And in third place, Maggie Congdon, who I think was awesome and was my kind of dark horse darling to keep an eye on, and I thought she lived up to that terrifically. These prelims, though, were, I mean, on both the men and women's sides in the mile were not great to watch, honestly.
They were ugly. They worked out like well for what I
Yeah.
predicted, but like it was ugly. It was just really like I was like, stop! Like, what are you doing? Yeah, it's a little frustrating to watch. But do you know how many people in our we had 1, 2, 3, 8 people in TSR do predictions for D1. How many people do you think predicted Mina Scatchard to be an All-American?
Oh, I mean, one.
Correct. Who do you think that person was?
Probably the person who's bringing it up.
It absolutely was. That's correct. Now, granted, I had her back in like 7th, but I was just surprised. I'd been so high on her. I got been like, guys, she's really good, and no one listened to me. Anyways, the point being, Wilma Nielsen's just the better miler. She's just the most complete miler in this field. And she was just the best, and it just it's not that I thought Salon couldn't win. I said she was a title contender, but just you look at what Wilma was able to do this entire season, the speed, the consistency in which she ran fast times, how she ran fast times in different types of races and settings. She had proven track record momentum on her side. I was just almost a little surprised by how, we had myself and Rachel predicted Wilma to win and everyone else predicted Salon. So
Really? I didn't look at that. Oh man, I would have. Yeah, I would have not. That would have been.
Listen, I said, do you want to do predictions? You're like, nah, you guys got it.
No, I would have. I said I was more thinking like if I saw that, I would have been like, guys, really? Like, I would have. Yeah, there would have been some words exchanged.
Total, just me and Rachel. So Rachel gets the pat on the back for the week.
Yes.
What was your biggest takeaway from the rest of these results?
I mean, Appleton was someone that I thought looked really good in prelims, and just I don't know what happened in the final. I thought she was someone that could have been in that top 3 pretty easily. The rest of these results, though, I nothing really stands out that much. I mean, the top 3 is probably is the biggest surprise. I think Nielsen winning isn't that big of a surprise, but the 2 following her were. And then Matug and Forrester finishing kind of in the middle, Riggins being 7th. I think Schoberg and Rangel Beatrice, I think both of them were probably underrated amongst a lot of us, despite running a really fast times earlier in the year. And then we're kind of, they're kind of newer to this scene, even though Rangel Beatrice has been right around this level for a while. And no one really, I don't think there was a lot of expectation for them to be in the finals or be in that All-American zone. And they both, I think, acquitted themselves very well by just getting to the finals.
Well, I think you look at Rangel Beatrice finishing 9th, you're like, man, no All-American. Yeah. I have a feeling you didn't see this. How fast do you think she split on the anchor leg of the DMR?
Ooh. 4:29?
4:25.
Oh my gosh.
Now, in her defense, 4:25.98, but still, I mean,
that's ridiculous.
So I'm like, you know what? Cut her some slack. LSU got 4th in that race. She's allowed to have that mile final.
Yeah, I mean, she ran 3 4:35s or faster in less than 24 hours. That's pretty good.
Yeah. she's allowed to have a pass on that one. So that was a heck of a. I'm gonna have to. I wonder if the writers are gonna reflect that in the result in the rankings. To talk to them
Yeah,
about
that's a tough one, but that's probably something you have to think about.
that. Men's mile. I'm just transitioning off of that because I don't think there's a whole lot more in the women's mile to
Yeah,
really
no,
talk
this
about.
one wasn't. Uh, when Nielsen ran the way she did in the prelims, you're like, yeah, this
Yeah.
is. I mean, just the way that I think what you were saying about the way she had been running, like her 1,000-meter performances, her below distance performances, I think were what gave you so much more confidence in her over someone like Ayiladis. Like if you put Ayiladis in a 3K, yeah, you're feeling a lot more confident about her than Nielsen. But in the mile, it seemed I just would have been stunned if she would have beaten her.
Speaking of stunned, I was listening back to our podcast last night, and I said, "What are the chances that Nathan Green loses?" And
Yeah.
you said, I was like, "I'll give him a 70% chance to win," effectively saying he has a 30% chance to lose. Well, the 30% chance came out of the mile finals. Georgetown's Abel Teffra, who I had kind of floated as like
Yeah.
I think like, if you really wanted to squeeze him in there in the national title conversation, you could, but still Nathan Green's title to lose. Well, Nathan Green fights like hell, eventually gets to the front, and Teffra just kicks him down in a really well put together race. And there's nothing more to say other than that. Teffra was just flat out the better racer on that day. He gets the win, the upset over Nathan Green. Washington's reign of
Yeah.
mile and 1,500-meter national titles ends at 6 straight. Boston U's Foster Malik gets third. Our freelancer, Will Logia, who was on site there, was freaking out. Wilma Saudi, fourth from Oklahoma State. Isaiah Givens, Colorado, fifth. Ronan McMahon, Staggs, sixth from Washington. Stephen Jackson, Boston College, seventh. Colin Solomon, eighth of Northern Arizona. Thoughts?
Yeah, I thought Nathan Green should have won this race. Like there was no reason for him to go when he did. Like when you're in this type of field where you don't have any 348 milers, you're clearly the fastest guy. I just don't think he needed to be at the very front when he did. I thought that was what ultimately did him in, was he just went a little early, and he could have just sat there right on everybody's tails. And I think he probably, and for good reason, thinks he has the best kick in the field. So why don't you use that at 200 rather than at 400 out?
I'm going to give him a little bit of grace here. I'm going to give him a little bit of grace. I think in retrospect, you watch the race and you're like, that was a little early. Not
Yes.
dramatically, but it was a little early. I agree with you. It was. But when you have Colin Solomon as a 145 guy, 146 this winter, right? And then you have Abel Teffra who's run 217 for 1,000 meters. The idea is that those two guys who we said in the podcast before this are probably his two biggest threats for the national title. And then those guys, are the speediest too. If you're going to try to extend your kick, I think it makes sense in the moment, as you're watching this, which is easier to say rather than do. I agree with you. I thought he went a little early. I don't hate where his mind probably was, or what the thought process was, or the theory of it, is what I will say to that.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes to our DMR conversation with Strand versus Martin. I just think, like, and I felt it in the moment, right, where it's like,
Sure.
and I get it. I've been in that situation where you're right up near the front and you just want to give yourself the space and you just want to go for it, and it's hard not to get antsy in that situation. And that's what I felt like he was. He was just a little antsy, like he just wanted to get going, and because it wasn't like a super fast race, right? They came through 809 at like 158. Like it wasn't a like really quick start. So we're picking at nits here. Like he finished second. He ran a really good race. I just think there's a lot of different scenarios where he waits until like 300 or 200 to go, where he ends up winning this race.
More surprising All-American, Malik or Givens? Malik in third, Givens in fifth.
I think Malik, just because he finished all the way up at third, like that was wild. Givens, I just making the final. I thought he should have been pretty happy with that, and for him to finish fifth, I think is incredible. It's such a weird list of milers. Like
It is a weird
at the
list.
start of the season, the fact that you have like Benny Anderson, Steven Jackson, Isaiah Givens, and Foster Malik as 5 of the top 9 milers is just no discredit to these guys. These guys ran fantastic this year. They ran
no discredit them, Ben. Discredit them.
Super fast time to get there, and then they ran well in the prelims to get to the finals. It's just not the list that I think any of us would have predicted coming into this year.
No, I'm actually just trying to pull it up. My internet's being super slow, but I'm trying to like look at this and being like, man, how many of these guys were in the mile finals last year? Like it wasn't Jackson. Like Solomon was, Green was, and Teffra was. Is that it?
That's crazy. Yeah, Musau didn't have a good indoor season last year, right?
No. And that's what I'm kind of like, oh man, all right. Like let me do here. Here we go. Oh, that's right. Green ran the 800. All right. Well, I'm not going to try to wait for my Wi-Fi to catch up, but yeah, odd field. Let's transition off of the mile though, and talk about the women's 800 meters.
Yeah, talk about prelims, man.
Holy shit. Wyatt bleep that out. Oh my gosh. The wildest prelim results ever?
No. Yeah, just bonkers.
I'm at a loss. So for those wondering, women's 800 meters, Juliet Whitaker, Stanford, the favorite to win the national title, does not get out of the prelims.
Finishes sixth. Not only does she not make it, she finishes 6th in her heat.
Brutal. Well, okay. Well, surely the other 159 runner this season made it. Sanu Jallo? No. Way too way too aggressive in her prelim. Gets caught, does not make it. Well, surely the woman who had arguably the most impressive 800 meter win of the season in Megan Hunter, surely she of BYU will make it up. Nope, didn't make it. And when that happens and neither of those 3 women make it, you're like, oh, this is Makayla Rose's race to lose. Like she's going to win the national title. And that's that. That's going to be the conversation. But then the mile finals happened. And instead of being the ultra aggressive front runner that she could have been against a field that really couldn't have matched her if she tried that, she finishes 4th. What an insane 2 rounds.
Yeah, I honestly, going into the 800 finals, I didn't know who was going to be the favorite. Like I was not as confident as you were that it was going to be Makayla Rose. I was looking at it and I was like, I mean, is Rasheem Willis gonna, even though she hasn't been that good this year, like is she going to end up winning another 800 title? Like I
thought that.
I that's kind of like when they got to the starting line, I was like, I think I'm picking Willis right now. Like, and for her, I mean, she ran a good race, finished 3rd, but it was the athlete who nearly took a tumble in the first lap, Makayla Paige, who ends up winning her first national title.
She gets to the break, is leading through first lap, immediately gets tripped, almost falls, somehow acrobatically stays on her feet.
And keep her momentum, which was the amazing thing.
Yeah, and that's the other part where and then she just like stays in the lead. And I can't help but wonder, I'm like, was that the plan? Because I think what happened is that she probably got rattled, and she even said in a post-race interview, she's like, yeah, I was a little rattled there when I almost went down. And then she just stays in the lead and just keeps going. And I'm like, well, this was... And honestly, it was too easy because Victoria Bosson of Harvard was giving her more than she can handle. I thought Bosson ran a phenomenal race. Really thought it was a great race from her. But Paige was awesome. Paige was great. Was this the most impressive national title win between the 800-mile 3K, 5K DMR? All things considered.
I don't know about most impressive, but most surprising. I think certainly. I think you can make a case for the BYU women the way that Chamberlain ran that race.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. All right. Yeah. You know what? That's fair. I think that's fair. I think it's when you lead wire to wire and almost trip.
Yeah.
That's like from an execution standpoint, one of the most impressive races I thought of the weekend. Makayla Paige was just awesome. Shout out to On. So I'm watching. Obviously On supported us this past weekend. Day one didn't go necessarily as dearly as maybe would have hoped, and then they
Yeah.
won 5 national titles between 200 women's 400 4x4 with Isabella Whitaker. But then Makayla Paige, Kayla McCabe, really great day. Really, really great day for them. So shout out to On, shout out to Paige.
Did you think Bosung was going to catch her?
I did.
I really thought she was. I thought she was going to pass her. I thought that was one of the more remarkable things that Paige was able to do.
I agree.
Besides the not falling, was just holding Bosung off. I thought that was incredible.
I want to go back to Rose. Why was she not more aggressive? I still can't figure this part out.
I just don't know if there's
of all the times to be aggressive, this was the time.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know if she had the confidence in her fitness. Like, I think a lot of the way she runs is she just believes she's better than everyone else. And I mean, again, I don't like it when reporters or analysts try to like psychoanalyze athletes when we know precious little about their actual like way 100%. They think. But like with all that said, from an outsider looking in, it just seems like she always has a ton of confidence that she's the best runner in the field, and so she's willing to go push the pace, and she has a ton of confidence in her fitness. It never felt like this year, after not getting off to as good of a start training wise, that like she had that same level of confidence.
Well, what was really confusing is that, like, in a post-race interview with Donnie that we have on our YouTube page, she was like, "No, me and my coach, we thought that we were ready. We thought that we were ready to win the national title this year." Which I was like, then why?
It didn't run. Yeah, that the actions don't line up with
so now I will say this: if I'm willing to give anyone a pass, it's her. Like,
yeah.
I mean, you want to talk about like someone who's just masterclass. She's it. So like, hey, okay. And a weird 800-meter field didn't turn out in her favor. Okay, so be it. The second half of this field, weird group. Smila Colby in 5th place of North Florida, who gets in after TCU's Tabitha Nagao opts out. Not going to comment any further on that because that is still ongoing in terms of research. But hey, do your own Googling. Gabriella Grissom of Miami, Sofia Gorierin 7th, Gladys Chipnigetich 8th. If I had told you at the beginning of the season that those 4 women were going to be All-Americans, what would you have said?
I mean, Chipnigetich and Gorierin, I certainly could have believed.
Sure.
Yeah, Colby and Grissom. I mean, I feel like we talked about Colby earlier in the year about I think when she ran, what was it, 202 or something like that, earlier, maybe even 201. She ran very well earlier in the year, and then we didn't really talk much about her after that because everybody else was running super fast. So yeah, stunning that her and especially Grissom, both her 5th and 6th. It was, yeah, just an upside down final in the 800s. Nothing seemed quite right.
Let's move off. We're going to the men's side, and it was Matthew Erickson of Oregon. Brilliant race execution, poised, composed, smart, peaked at the perfect time this postseason. It was just, I think, the most complete athlete from a tactical and execution standpoint in that race. He gets the win. Abduali Hassan gets 2nd. Ada McCarthy 3rd. Tanoda Matsatsa 4th. What were your first thoughts when you saw that he won?
Yeah, I think for Erickson, he proved kind of the theory of the weekend. He was he made the move last, and he ended up being the winner because he bided his time, didn't use up the kick early, and just kicked everybody down. I will say this: I think if Matsatsa runs like not even an A+ race, I think if he runs an A race, I think he wins this. Like I think he did not run his best race. And whether that was tactically or he just wasn't at 100%, Like he just didn't look quite himself. But you look at the top 4 guys, and it makes sense that these were the top 4 guys, right? Erickson coming off of a really good Big Ten championship. Like, I didn't expect him to win, but I expected him to finish well in these 800 championships. Hassan, McCarthy, Masaza. Those have been the 3. Those are the 3 guys that have run the fastest times. They're 3 out of the top 4. It was fairly predictable in that sense. I just don't think anybody would have expected Erickson to be the one on top.
Yeah, I mean, this was an upset. So actually, I want to play a little bit of a fun game with you. There was 10 national title winners, including the DMR, right? I'm going to go through. You tell me if this was an upset or not, okay? Ready?
Okay.
So Matthew Erickson of Oregon, 800
Yes.
meters. Yes. Makayla Paige of UNC, 800 meters.
Yes.
Abel Teffra of Georgetown, the mile.
Yes.
Wilma Nielsen of Oregon, the mile.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Kayla McCabe of West Virginia in the women's 3K.
Yes.
Ethan Strand of the men's 3K.
No.
Doris Lemngole, 5K, women's 5K.
No.
Who was Brian Musau, men's 5K.
Yes.
What was it? Virginia, DMR, men?
No.
And then BYU, DMR.
Yes. Yeah.
So you think that was an upset?
Well, that one's hard because there wasn't really anybody that was a favorite in the women's DMR. I think I don't.
Okay. I don't know if I would have
could go back and forth on.
Okay, I don't think I would have said yes, but regardless, I think we counted half upsets.
Yeah. It was a weekend of upsets. I mean, it was a weekend of like timing your kick correctly. Like there wasn't a whole lot of people that like went early and still ended up winning. And it was, I think a lot of favorites being dethroned, and in pretty surprising fashion for a lot of them.
I'm looking at the rest of these results, and like Erickson kind of mixes up and messes up that top 4.
Right. But outside of that, yeah, exactly.
I mean, even at the beginning of the season, I took a waiver on Olivier Desmueles being like, he's going to be an All-American. Did I feel like strongly in my conviction there? No, but like, hey, content's content. And he got it. It was 8th place. It was a bad final, but he got it. And so, I mean, if Cole Lindhorst actually runs. And he's
why did he run?
So because Kadali of Oregon in the prelims tries to get around the final curve. Just, it looks like almost someone trips on him. No, he just trips himself.
Yeah.
And then as he falls, he clips Lindhorst, who then goes down. Lindhorst wins the protest. But then I guess Lindhorst must have been hurt enough where he couldn't even start. So like,
that was like, you just got advanced and you're not ready. Like that was.
And I imagine like because they both took hard falls, like to the point where I was like, ooh, I don't know how fast these guys are getting up. And I think Lindhorst was certainly on the tougher end of that. So
yeah, that's fair. Waki, 5th place. I think he's. I mean, him and Matsasa are going to have some great battles over the next 3 years. It's going to be awesome. Like these 2 guys are the future of this event. They're both super young. They're in the same conference. It's going to be awesome. Like they're just going to have some great battles. They're both going to run insanely fast times because they're just going to be pushing each other year in season over season. It's going to be fantastic.
I agree. Yeah, he's so good. He's so good. Who's the favorite for the outdoor national title?
I think Matsatsa. So I think he's still. You look at his body of work. I think he still deserves to be.
Do you think Matthew Erickson can win the outdoor 800 meter national title?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I again, all I've made this point a couple times. Indoor, outdoor, not made the same. It's you have to be. The tactics are so much more important indoors. Raw fitness way more important outdoors, especially in the 800. So I think that's where it's like Hassan, McCarthy, like Matsatsa, those guys who have run faster times. I think that helps them a lot more on the outdoor oval. But I mean, the way Erickson's running right now, I mean, it doesn't. I don't think there's any reason why you would doubt his ability to compete with the best of the best.
He did. I mean, he was. I mean, postseason, so good. I mean, this guy barely got into the national meet. Barely.
But this wasn't like Rivaldo Marshall, where he's
No,
coming off a bad
no.
conference weekend and then just stuns. Like this is someone
Well,
who
that
was
field also was just not good.
right, exactly. And I think that's people could make that comparison of like, hey, this guy kind of came out of nowhere, won an NCAA title. This was Erickson had a great Big Tens and then comes in on a hot streak and follows up on that in the best way possible.
Yeah, had a 145 split in the DMR like
Yeah,
in the last few weeks too. So,
exactly.
all right, women's 3K transitioning. We got to the last event here. Kayla McCabe wins her first ever national title, moved to the front of the pack, and just kind of cranks down the pace of those last few laps and just simply runs away and outkicks Doris Lemngole, as well as New Mexico's Pamela Kosgei, who then takes a hard fall
Yeah,
in this
jeez.
final 30 meters, goes from 3rd to 11th, which I just felt really bad for because she was having a
Yeah.
great weekend. But McCabe, first national title. I was great. I was like, yes, she won. Also, she's a non-athlete, so we root for her. But that's that was great to see.
Yeah, it felt like a well-deserved capstone to her career.
Agreed.
That she's run so well for so many years that her not winning an NCAA title would have felt a little unjust.
Agreed.
And so for her to get this one, which I feel like she's had better chances in other championships, this one felt like there was a lot of people in front of her. But for her to beat this field in this manner, this was one where hey, she went early and it was the right decision, and so really happy for her. Very well deserved. Lemngole put up a heck of a fight. I thought she was again in control, very smooth for so long. Like I thought she ran exceptionally well. She just got beat by a better woman this weekend. And then Kosgei, yeah, I put up a valiant effort as well. I thought she was very impressive. I was disappointed in the BYU women.
Yep.
Halladay-Lowry ends up finishing 3rd, but it was really more like a distant 4th if Kosgei doesn't go down. I really thought she could have been in the mix, and I really thought Chamberlain should have been in the mix. Like the final time was 9 flat. Like this wasn't that quick. It was just and
Yep.
it was should have set her up perfectly. And again, I'm wondering my working theory is the bigger more congested fields in the indoor season probably aren't super conducive to Chamberlain,
Yep.
but I thought this was the perfect race for her to be able to win.
Yeah, but in defense of someone like Lemengole, who's also very tall,
Yeah.
or at least
Yeah.
definitely on the taller
Exactly.
side,
Yeah.
I
I mean,
should
it's
say.
it's
So I'm with you there. Lemengole again. This was another race where I'm like, you know what? Great turnover, great
yeah.
speed. Thank you for showing me that. But when I look at McCabe, I think it's impossible to ignore the fact she had the only fresh legs in the field.
Yeah.
Everyone else was doubling back. Everyone, not just he means most. No, I mean
No,
every other
everyone.
runner
Yeah.
was doubling back in some capacity except her, and it showed. She had the freshest legs. There was still more pop at the second half of her move from when she made it.
Yeah.
So that's what I'll
What
say
what
there.
what
Go
do you
ahead.
think about Shalana Yildiz just starting and stepping off the track?
I'd have to take a look at the final scores, right? Because it was the 3K and then the 4x4. Georgia has 39 points, Oregon
So
55. So
yeah,
I guess they had locked.
they knew before the race that they had won. And so
Yeah, at that point. So I
it,
guess okay, sure. But then I don't know.
I
I
don't
don't
like it.
know.
I don't like it.
I don't love it. I don't love it. It's a taken away. You take away an opportunity from an athlete who would have contested that event and made an honest effort. At the same time, I get it ish.
Yeah, I mean, I get why they didn't scratch. Like, I get why they entered her. Like,
Yeah,
they could have
100%,
needed the points. Like, and
100%.
so yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Like, no, I want to be clear. I have zero problem with her like being entered. If you're entered, just run. Like, and if you're healthy, run. Like, it's not as if it's an extenuating circumstance where she was hurt. Like, run. Like, it makes such a mockery of the process to start and then just walk off the track. Like why? Like why even go to the starting line then? Like
Because then I think it's like you can argue on a staff. I don't even know. They've changed that rule 1,000 different
I just
times. It's like
I didn't like it.
I don't love it either. To be very clear, I don't love it either. I don't necessarily so much blame Salon as I do for whatever that decision was. It was just like
it wasn't her
all right.
decision.
No, probably not.
That would be my guess. That was a coaching staff decision. So
So
I don't love it.
The worst part is that I get why they did it.
Yes,
That's the
I do
worst
too.
part.
There's reasoning behind it. It's just leaves a bad taste in your mouth. Elsewhere, again, we talked about Bunnage. Good to see her back, like, and just running. I thought that was heartening. Amina too, like coming back from the mile to finish fourth, running 9:03. That was one of the more impressive races I think we've seen in these championships.
She was awesome. Double All-American, 2 top 5 All-American honors between the mile and 3K. We interview her, at least, the two on girls, Ashley Jones and Lindsay Butler, who we had helping us out with interviews. You can check us out on on our Instagram page. They were like, hey, Amina, congrats on a great mile race. What do you think about that 3K? She's like, I'm just happy with how things are going. I'm going to just see how this 3K goes. I mean, yeah, hopefully something works out well, but if not, like, I'm really happy. And then she gets a better result. Which is awesome. Like, and I think at the beginning of December or the beginning of January, if I told you, hey, Amina Matug's going to be an All-American, you would have said what? And then if I said she's going to be a double All-American, a double top 5 All-American, you would have said what?
I mean, for her being an All-American, I would have been like, that's great. She's back. Like I would not have been stunned. Again, like she's one of the more talented runners in the country. She just hasn't been healthy and been able to show it. For if you told me double All-American, I would have been like, is she a 5K, 3K runner now? Like, or like, I truthfully would have been like, I have no idea how she would have done it unless she completely changed the way she was running.
Wow, and the wildest part is that, like, she's been fasting for Ramadan.
Yeah,
and like that's
I don't know. It's one of the most. We had a high school athlete that I coached who did that. I'm in awe. It's
without saying who did Matug's double All-American performances was that collection of results better than any singular distance individual national title that you saw?
This weekend?
Yes.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. I'm just curious. I just want to see how far I could push you on that narrative. So
yeah, no. I you know me. If you win a championship, that's
yeah. I'm with you. I'm with you. I just like to stir the pot because that's my favorite thing to do. Men's 3K. Ethan Strand learns from the DMR.
Yes.
Kicks down Martin, wins the national title, and here we are. That's it.
Yeah, it was so cool. I mean, don't confuse our like like this. It was the one of the more obvious results, right? That Strand or Martin was going to win this. Don't confuse that with like this was a sick race. Like this was awesome. Like they followed up the DMR, which was fantastic, great theater, so much fun to watch with this gem of a performance, and it's so rare. I mean, I'd have to look back through the results where the top 2 guys ran 2 races and they were the top 2 guys. They finished 1-2. It's so rare that happens. Normally it's like at least one of those guys that has a bad day and it's someone else going head to head with one of the favorites. We got to see them both go head to head twice. And for a different one to win each time, I think made it all that more interesting. And you could clearly see Strand was not going to make the same mistake that he made in the DMR.
No, I mean, this was just a great battle. They lived up to the hype. They both delivered. They both ran different types of races, and it was exciting. And one gets one win, the other gets the other. It was just a great matchup. And I think we're going to look back on this as like one of the best national meet matchups that we've really ever seen. Maybe not just from like a times or like a narrowness standpoint, but just from like the thrill of like elite against elite. Yes. And it was really, and they also just seemed like great guys. Like they also just seemed like great dudes. And so that was, it was pretty cool to see that. They ran well.
I think they just love running against each other. Like they respect each other and they like going head to head against each other, which I think is, I mean, they're in the same conference. They get opportunities to race each other, and we're going to see it again this outdoor season, which is going to be awesome. But I mean, from a times perspective, it was in this 3K, it was the top 3 finishers were 348 mile, 348 mile, 330, 1500 meter runner.
And
Or
Liam Murphy, I'm pretty sure, has
and
also run like
yeah,
333, 1500 or something like that.
like, and
It
then you had the 5K national champ. Like,
yeah,
it was
5K national champ.
and
Then you had
730 3K runner.
yeah, like it was. I mean, the top guys came out on top, and so that was exciting to see. Yeah, and it was great. Like, actually, now that I think about this, Ethan Strand and Gary Martin, probably the clear 1-2 winners of this weekend, right? I think it's fair to say that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Brian Musau, the third biggest winner,
I think so. Yeah.
wins the 5K national title, gets 5th in 3K. Productive weekend. I think Musau is probably the third biggest winner of this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought he ran admirably, especially when you compare, like, the guys he's running against have such a significant like speed advantage on him, like in this 3K.
Who do you think has who would you definitively, if I'm like, Ben, you need to choose right now or else the world will end? Is it who had the better weekend, Ethan Strand or Gary Martin?
Oh man. Oh, that's brutal.
Ben, the world is on your shoulders right now. You must decide.
They couldn't have had more, like, equally balanced. I'm only saying this because I think the expectations for Strand might have been a teensy bit higher coming into this. I think it was Gary Martin. If you run 730 and 348 in a season, I think you're expected to win pretty much every single race you run. And I mean, Martin obviously ran 348 as well, but he didn't run the 730. I think so. I think Strand probably came in with slightly more expectations, and I think for Martin to get him once, I think ends up making him the slightly biggest winner.
I still go Strand.
I won't
just
argue.
Because the DMR, I think, is like it's not that it devalues, but it's just it's hard when you have 3 other individuals contributing to that race. To me,
yeah. I mean, again,
It was a mostly equal weekend. I don't think there was a wrong answer either. So, and Ben, with that, we're done with the indoor track season. Things, in theory, get easier from. In theory, everyone find wood and knock on it immediately. In theory, it gets easier from here. But nice job, man. Nice job. I thought this was probably the easiest and most efficient indoor track season we've had.
Yeah. I think we've got it down. We, like you said, we have a good staff around us that I think makes this a lot more doable. And just the amount of content, whether it's from freelancers or whatever that we've been able to get, has been awesome. So fantastic year. We had so many great storylines. The athletes were incredible, had so many incredible performances. The national meet lived up to the hype. It was just a fantastic year to watch. And I'm really excited for outdoor season, but also excited to take a step back for a couple weeks.
Yeah. Now we will do end of season awards soon. So those are coming up, and I am going to have you contribute, at least vote on those, I should say.
Yes, I will do those.
So I am going to look forward to that. But other than that, YouTube, go check out our entire library of post-race interviews. There are a lot. We sent Will Regia and Donnie out there. Let me just double check. I want to see how many we have here. I'm pretty sure we had like some ridiculous. So 4 all the way down to like, oh God, I can't even try to count. That's so much more than I thought. So much more than I thought we had. That's got to be at least 30 some. So go check that out. Instagram, Apple Podcast review, Spotify review. Go get a subscription on TSR. We've got Raleigh Relays coming up. We've got Stanford Invite coming up. I had 2 people being like, are you sending anyone to the 10 in California? So it never stops. but Ben, that is all I have.
All right, Garrett. Well, until next week, I'll talk to you.
Shout out Wyatt Barnsley, our producer. Thanks, buddy. I'll see you, Ben. Bye.